But wanted to welcome you to our commercial class, and this is specifically for business owners. And I like to tell people that because I don't want you guys to think that, this is 100% not a training class. This is an educational class to get you a little bit of knowledge of what you guys have as an option as a tenant. So I tell people that because commercial real estate is very complex. I can have two different nail shops and have two totally different deals, right? You guys can be right beside each other and it will be totally different. So I always like to start the knowledge of understanding that, I want you guys to have knowledge, but this is not a training class. Oops, we skip right on to the end. Let's back up here. Okay, so here we go. About me. So I have been in real estate for 17 years. I've been in commercial real estate for about 8 of those 17 years. And one of the reasons that I started to train and talk about commercial real estate is because during my time as a mall manager, I sat at a property for 5 years, and I realized that business owners sign leases, but they're not too sure what they sign, right? So, and sometimes when they sign it, it's a bit later in the game to kind of help them and navigate them. So, in my course of being a mall manager, I opened a brokerage and I was like, okay, I'm going to start talking to small business owners and let them know they do have options. So one of the first things I do when I talk to business owners is ask them if they have a business plan, right? So this is very basic stuff, but you will be surprised how many people actually start an idea and don't have the actual business plans to follow to, right? So I tell people that I need your business plan. A part of that, since I'm doing the commercial real estate piece, is me asking you guys, what is the rent that you're looking for? So if you're looking for a 5,000 square foot building and you're telling me your rent is going to be about $1,500 a month, that's the conversation for me to have and say, hey, that's like almost impossible. And the reason I say that is because if you are a new business, I have to take your business plan, which is your vision, and I have to send it over to the other agent. So we need them to see the vision like you and I see the vision. So the business plan has to be detailed. It has to include some reasonable items in there. Be aware of that. Take your time. This is not something you can do in 8 hours and send back to me. If you do it in 24 hours, I'm a little bit concerned. Take your time, build your business plan. One of the other things I speak about is your exit plan. So I'm not saying that I need you guys to fail. That is not what this means. The exit plan is saying that, hey, I've been doing this business for 10, 15, 20 years, and I'm done. I'm tired. I'm ready to retire. I'm ready to travel. What are you going to do? What's your exit plan? Is it going to be sell the business? Is it going to be to hope that one of your kids take it over, like I'm doing? I have fingers crossed one of my kids take my business over, but I need an exit plan that's reasonable for me. That when I'm ready to retire, hopefully in like 5 years, someone can figure it out for me. So within that, I like to also discuss the demographics and the location of your business. You need to know what your demographics are. You need to know who are the people that you are talking to, who are your customers. And in commercial real estate, we can get really down to the details of understanding that if you guys have that information. So if you cater to families, then we need to see what shopping center and what location tells me what information, what data I can see who has the most families coming to that shopping center. If you are a business that, hey, my business is something I need someone to walk by my space, like my business is, I get foot traffic. I get, oh, I drove by and saw your sign traffic. That is something as a real estate company I survive off of. So my office location had to make sense. It had to be visible. However, if you're in an office that really doesn't need visibility, great, we can look for that. So if you know your demographics of who your business caters to, then that allows me to help you find a good location. So we can't do one without the other. So always keep that in mind. If you are currently in the lease and you know, hey, my foot traffic is down when you go to your second location, that is something you should look for. If you're not in a lease and you're getting started, again, be sure that you know your demographics, you know who you're selling to, so that way we can find your location. One of my favorite topics in commercial real estate is who's responsible. So again, I told you guys I've been doing this for 17 years. I actually started in multifamily in 2007. And at that point in time, it was you call in, you say, hey, my toilet's broken. I say, I got you. I'm going to put a work order in. You tell me your HVAC is broken. I say, no worries. Let me get that taken care of for you. However, not so much in commercial real estate. So that is one of the biggest things I talk to clients about and business owners in general is say, are you ready for the responsibility that comes with it? Typically, the landlord is responsible for your roof and structure of your building. Okay. That is a ton of things in between. If you can just consider where you are in a residential home right now, it is a ton of things that could happen in between the roof and the structure of your building. Some landlords, depending on the lease, may be responsible for a little bit more. However, the tenant is usually responsible for a ton of these things inside of the commercial space. So that means the HVAC, if the landlord does not have in the lease and or you don't negotiate that in the lease that you want the HVAC taken care of, then you're responsible for that HVAC. If you guys are familiar with commercial units, they're not cheap. They are not cheap. It's easy $30,000. I'm not too sure about you, but for me as a tenant, I don't want to pay $30,000 for any type of deal. I don't want to do that. So how do we avoid that? We negotiate that. We have these conversations prior to signing the lease. Once you sign the lease, it's 100% a done deal. It's nothing more that you can do there in the sense of trying to go back and say, hey, my heat stopped working and it's cold. My clients are cold. I'm cold. So you want to be sure that you're negotiating these things well before you sign a lease. Terms and conditions of a lease. So speaking of a lease, when you're looking at commercial real estate, sometimes the years is not just 1 year like you might see in a residential lease. Some owners like to see 3 to 5 years, maybe even 10, depending on what type of business you have for the lease term. So these are things to consider as well, that you're signing 3 years, 5 years, or a 10-year lease. Everything is negotiable. This is not residential real estate. In 2007, when I set a lease in front of you, I said, here's what the deal is. You want to rent this apartment? Back then it was $750. We know we're not finding that anymore. You want to rent this 2 bedroom for $750? Here's the lease. You either signed it or you didn't. Okay. However, in commercial real estate, your lease is a way longer lease for terms and the number of pages. So you need to negotiate. You need to know what your business needs. You need to know what you need from now to year 1, 2, and 3. So you have to project your vision, not just for today, but what it looks like in 3 years from now. So remember, everything is negotiable. Lease rates is a big thing that people struggle with, right? So you see online, you're looking at a commercial space and it says $17, and you're like, oh, this is a really great deal. However, how you calculate that is a little bit different, right? So I have a task for you guys. I need you guys to pull out your calculator on your phone. And let's say you're looking at a building. The building is 4,200 square feet, so 4,200, okay? 4,200 square feet. Well, you saw on the sign that it said that the lease rate is 17 PSF or per square foot. So you're going to times that 4,200 times 17. And you're going to get a big number. Your number is 71,400. However, that is not your monthly amount. That is your yearly amount. Okay. So when you're looking at PSF, that lease rate is a yearly amount. So you take that 71,400, you divide it by 12, and you will see that your rent for this particular charge is $5,950 a month. Okay. So again, it's up to you to negotiate that. Will you stay there? Well, maybe depends on what you're asking for, which brings me to my next topic of tenant improvements. Okay. So if you're going to a space that needs a little bit of work or maybe a lot of work, you have to decide if this 5,950 makes sense for you at that point in time. Can you negotiate it? Can you say, hey, Mr. Landlord, I need some help. What can you do to help me with some of this tenant improvements? I will say that, guys, this is business. This is nothing but business. If you're asking the landlord to help you, you have to be prepared that he may raise that $17 per square foot to maybe $18.50 per square foot, because he has to recoup the money that he's giving you to help build out your business space. So I want you guys to remember that. Will they reduce the rent? Maybe. What deals are you offering them? Are they looking for 3 years and you're offering 5 years? So you're giving them 2 extra years of income. Are you going in and doing your own improvements and you're not asking for anything? Are you saying, hey, I do need a little bit of help, but I understand that you're going to increase my rent. So maybe I'll add $1 here and add an extra year in the back end, right? So these are things that you have to consider to be very creative with when you're getting into that, right? So there's just things to think about in that sense. So lease options, again, just depends on what you're looking for. Depends on what type of lease it is. One of my favorite things I like to talk about, and I didn't put it on a slideshow because I usually teach this class and it's about an hour of information. So I'm just throwing a lot of information at you guys in 15 minutes. One of the lease options a lot of people see nowadays is a triple net lease, right? So these are very popular in this area, especially if you're in a shopping center. That means that you're going to have that $17 per square foot as rent, but you are also going to have what we call a CAM charge, common area maintenance, CAM charge. Those numbers are based off the shopping center. So it's not a direct number that I can give you because it depends on what the shopping center looks like. It depends on what type of work they're doing for the shopping center. So, for example, it's snowing outside. If you're in a shopping center and you have a person that is scraping the sidewalks right now, they laid salt right now, they're making sure that your shopping center is safe for your clients. That would go in the CAM charge because it's a common area maintenance, right? It benefits the entire shopping center. That is broken down into your pro rata share. So based off the size of the space you have will be your percentage of how much you pay towards this CAM charge, right? So common area maintenance, CAM charges. What does that look like for you? I like to tell people that you pay a monthly, what I call a savings account, and 2 CAM charges every month. So if your CAM charges is another $5.25, that same 4,200 square foot that we looked at, you would times that 4,200 times 525 and get that yearly amount. And you're going to pay that a little bit every month towards that, right? So you're going to pay whatever that 12-month rate is, you're going to pay it towards. At the end of the year, once as a property manager has determined that here are all the things that I did in the common area, here are all the things that I did to benefit the actual tenants, they will give you your pro rata share of this. If you paid $1,500 for the year, for example, and the balance of the CAM charge for you is $2,000, it's a $500 gap that you are responsible to pay at the beginning of the new year, okay? So if you pay in the savings account every month and it equaled up to $1,500, the accounting department determined that your share for the shopping center was $2,000, you are responsible for that $500 gap. However, if it's the opposite way, you still pay that $1,500 in. The end of the year, accounting did their recon and they said, well, this person is only responsible for $1,000 in CAM charges. It's still the $500 gap, but that will be a $500 gap or credit to you, okay? So if they do the budgets, you're over, they will pay you money back. Well, they will give you a credit towards your rent. But on the flip side, if you owe, you have to pay that. So there's something to keep in mind that you have rent, which is just your rent, and you have CAM charges, common area maintenance charges, that are separate from rent. They go together, but it's two separate things, okay? So we're about at that 15-minute mark. I'm pretty precise with timing. So you guys see it's 9:46. I will allow you guys to ask me some questions that you have, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, please, guys, go ahead and put your questions in the chat box, and as they come in, I can pose them to Christian. I do have to say, Christian, I found the common area maintenance. That's pretty cool. In my mind, excuse me, it almost sounds like you could equate it to an HOA for residential.
Exactly. That's exactly
You
how you
know?
consider it. That's the best way I can compare it between the two.
Yeah,
And we all know
yeah,
that
and
sometimes we're not a
also
fan of HOAs. We do know that.
exactly,
However,
exactly.
it can be beneficial.
Exactly. Also, um, as far as business plan and the lease terms, you want to be extremely careful. You're going to want to measure that up. I mean, if you're looking at signing a 3-year lease with a company, then you really need to have a minimum of a 3-year business plan in place, correct? I mean,
Correct. I will absolutely do a minimum. If you're signing a 3-year lease, try to do a 3-year business plan because, again, you're looking at the future. So you're not just saying, as of today, January 25th, and then all of 2025, this is what my business should do. Well, you're signing a 3-year lease. So you're looking at until January of 2028. So you do want to plan for that. So that way you can ensure that you're crossing every T's, dotting every I's to make sure that you're going to be comfortable in this 3-year lease because they're not always easy to get out of. But you want to make sure you're comfortable in this 3-year lease while you're there.
and also a question for you. What happens if a small business gets into a lease and then ends up having to close the business? Um,
It really
they're still
depends on the
responsible,
actual lease.
correct?
Yes, so it depends on the lease, depends on what the lease says. It will have terms for termination or will not. So if you're working with a commercial broker and you want to have that safety net, you have to ask them to negotiate that prior to signing the lease. So just be aware that these things are agreed upon really in what they call a letter of intent or LOI. So these are things are agreed upon in that point. So if I'm representing you, you're telling me, hey, I noticed that Starbucks is in here and my business survives off Starbucks. So I will have to write in that LOI that some of the terms that I'm going to be introducing in this lease says that if Starbucks goes dark, we have an out. Okay. So these are things that you want to consider way before you're signing the actual lease.
Okay. Next question. The common area maintenance charge, um, does that pertain to if you're leasing space in an office, and is it written in that if something happens to the HVAC system that you're sharing with other offices, say on the same floor, is it written in that each office shares the responsibility, the cost of fixing the HVAC unit?
It really depends. Again, I always go back to what does your lease say because it's no standard lease for commercial. So it really depends on what your lease says. You have to be sure that that is included if that is the case. If they're sharing HVACs, it's more than likely the landlord might be responsible for your HVAC instead. So these are things that sometimes, again, the landlord can say, I will take care of these items, but you're responsible for these items. So if you're sharing something with a totally different office space, it could be written in the lease that the landlord is going to take care of that HVAC, especially because it's shared. However, again, please be sure to read your lease to understand your lease, not just read it, understand it in the process of before you signing this. Have conversations. If you didn't use an agent, please go talk to a lawyer. It's way cheaper to pay for someone up front than it is to try to fix things in the back end. So to answer the question, again, it depends on the actual lease terms, but if it's a shared HVAC, it's more than likely the landlord is probably responsible for it from everyone.
Okay. We also have a business owner asking, I've noticed some shopping centers closing down. Are they responsible for leasing us another location? And if not, are we released from the lease?
So in the event that the shopping center is closing down, and I'm assuming you mean that the entire shopping centers at this point in time, like the entire things go black. If that is the case, it again depends on what your lease says, because if your lease says that, these are the things that trigger a problem and you're going to be released, then yes. However, in the event that your lease does not say anything about the shopping center going dark or anything about them closing, some leases actually say the opposite. They say that regardless of what we do here, whether we're leasing, whether we're not leasing, whether we're making progress or not making progress, you're responsible for this lease. So these are things that you want to be sure that you have. If you already have a lease and you're noticing things are a little bit closed, I'm happy to research it. I have a lot of tools that I can see if it's something that maybe a sale is happening, and maybe a new ownership is coming. So again, it depends on what your lease says. But one of the things that you want to have as your safety net when you're negotiating your deals.
Gotcha. Okay. Do we have any other questions? Does anyone have any other questions or comments for Christian? Guys, Christian absolutely is available for you anytime. If you call her office, I'm sure she'll set up a time to consult with you. And she can
Yes.
guide you through anything that you're looking at doing. If you're a homebound business at this point and you're looking to maybe get into commercial real estate, office setting or whatnot, Christian definitely is someone that can help you do that. And she can help you kind of navigate those terms and conditions of a lease
Yes,
for
I will
sure.
say fair warning. I'm very realistic as a person. So if you're telling me things and I will be honest and say, hey, this just doesn't make sense right now. Let's relook at this in a year, 6 months, whatever time frame we're looking. So I will say that is the warning that I love to brainstorm with people, love giving you great ideas. But if you're like, hey, I'm struggling. My sales are here 1 month and then drop Plymouth the next month. I'm going to say, okay, let's work on our focal point being keeping steady sales before we go sign a 3-year lease.
Exactly. Good. And just FYI, this is a recorded segment. So all this great information that Christian just shared with us will be going into our BBB YouTube library. So please feel free to look back at the library at this video at any time for any reference points that Christian shared with us. And other than that, I don't see any more questions at this time. Christian, thank you so much for this
Thank
information.
you.
It's so valuable, especially to the business owners or accredited businesses, because you never know. I mean, we've got, like I said, we have businesses that might be working out of their home at this point,
Right.
maybe looking into getting into an office situation, or maybe we have someone that is going from a small office and needs to go up. Or maybe we have an older business that's looking at maybe retirement in the next 5 years and shutting their business down, at which point they may need to just scale back and go from a large office back to a smaller office. Christian can help you guys with all of this at any time.
Yes.
So please reach out to her. And thank you again so much. And thank you for being on this meeting with me today. The next virtual meeting that we will be having will be March the 20th, Thursday morning again, 9:30, quick 15 to 20-minute meeting with a question answer period after. We'll be talking with Lisa Villarreal, who owns Hampton Roads Insurance Company. Lisa will be talking about some really cool things, different insurances that business owners can offer their companies, no matter how big or small your structure is. There's something out there for you that you can add as a benefit to the people that you're looking to recruit into working for you or the people that are already working with you. So again, thank you so much. And I hope you all have a great day.